Well, we made it. We've arrived at Easter week, and the of all of the gospel accounts of the resurrection of Jesus, the one that I return to most often is the encounter between Jesus and Mary Magdalene, because I think it really, to me, it really captures what was on the minds and the hearts of the disciples immediately following Christ's death and their reaction to his appearance after his resurrection. Um, yeah, in that passage, which is from John chapter 21, uh, the scene kind of opens with Mary Magdalene crying outside of the tomb. And we can understand that because at that point, the disciples didn't know anything about what happened after. All they knew was that Jesus had been crucified and that Jesus was dead. And so when Jesus first approaches Mary Magdalene, she's so deep in her grief that she doesn't even recognize who he is. And after a short dialogue, um, Mary does recognize who he is, and she immediately runs to him to throw her arms around him. And Jesus, rather strangely, says, "No, no, no, Mary, don't hold on to me." And that is to say, Mary may have been going to Jesus in hopes that they were going to go back to their old life, and Jesus saying, "No, no, 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 we're going forward to a whole new life." And it's a good lesson for us that we may find ourselves wanting to go back to a more comfortable, more familiar time in our lives, but we recognize that Jesus is always calling us forward to a new life, and a whole new life that we can't even begin to imagine. And if we saw it right now, we might not even recognize it for what it is. And so, as we go forward into the season of Easter and go back into our contemplation of the events surrounding the inauguration of the church and the early days of the church in the world, let us remember, Jesus is always calling us forward. He's always calling us to let go of the comfortable and familiar so that we can have room in our lives for a greater good that God has in store and that we can only begin to imagine now. And remember, God really is who he says he is. You are who he says you are, and live the life that he made you to live.